What's up, guys? John Stargarian here. I'm going to briefly talk about my play on Michael Chiesa against Rafael dos Anjos. So if you like the video, please drop a like and subscribe. So I'm playing Michael Chiesa at the moment for 1.5 units at plus 200. And frankly, I may actually increase that as the line's going up even further. And he's currently sitting at plus 230 on some books. And basically, I think there's a ton of value on this current line. In fact, I'd almost cap this fight near even. I know that sounds extreme, given that Dos Anjos is currently sitting as a minus 270 favorite. But I think there's some stuff in the tape that really shows us that in a 3-round fight, this is going to be super competitive and could really go either way. So when you think about RDA, you think, so when I first looked at this line, my initial thought was, oh my God, it's way too small. RDA is going to crush him, and I'm probably going to have a big bet on him. I thought that primarily because obviously the narrative about Chiesa, and to a large extent it's true, is if he can't get you down and control you there, he's going to get beaten up. And that's largely true. You know, he's not a great striker. He's very, very hittable. He only has a 51% defensive rating. And, you know, we've seen him get hurt and wobbled on the feet before. And obviously, Dos Anjos is a pretty strong defensive grappler. And the only guys who have really been able to, you know, quote unquote, ragdoll him are much bigger and aggressive grapple wrestlers at 170. And so my thinking had been, well, Chiesa is likely not going to be able to follow the path of Usman or Covington, or likely even Kevin Lee. And that RDA, when the fight was on the feet, would be able to really do damage. And to some extent, that's still true. But then I taped it, and I really came away feeling differently. So first of all, when you look at Dos Anjos, you know, he has one, and you look at Chiesa, they each do one thing, that I think is going to lead this to a lot of grappling against the fence. Namely, with Dos Anjos, he really, at least at this stage of his career, he doesn't really circle out anymore. So, you know, he won't stick and move at all. He won't circle off the fence. Instead, if you pressure him backwards, he's going to go right back to the fence and look to defend grappling from there and work in the clinch. We've seen him do this consistently with both Usman, Covington, and obviously the answer there is, oh, well, you know, they're the best of the best. You know, that's not surprising. But we also saw with Edwards, who's also quite good, and he was able to consistently back Dos Anjos up and get him in positions he wanted him in. And then we saw with Kevin Lee also. Now, Kevin Lee, I'm a big fan of, if you follow me on Twitter. I think he's a tremendous talent. I think he's got championship level upside. But he really didn't belong fighting at 170. And he was able to get Dos Anjos back to the fence even after he gassed out in rounds 3 and 4, was able to consistently pin him against there. We can basically assume that if Dos Anjos is pressured, he'll back up. He likely won't look to circle out either. On the other side of that, you have Chiesa, who is the exact opposite. He wants to come forward. He wants to lock you up and judo trip you. You know, he's got some single and double leg takedowns, but, you know, his most effective is really locking you up in the clinch and either beating you up there or tripping you from there and getting you down. And he's actually been remarkably effective at it in the UFC. If you look at his strike numbers, he's only absorbed 2.08 significant strikes for 15 minutes. And that's primarily because he does a tremendous job getting in your face, locking up the clinch, and getting takedowns. He lands 3.55 takedowns per 15 minutes as well, and he lands them at a 48% clip, which means he's ruthlessly efficient at it. And this is not, you know, Michael Chiesa is not out here fighting a bunch of bums. He's fought in some high-level competition. You know, he took Jorge Masvidal down a couple times. He took down Beneil Dariush a few times, and he actually finished Beneil Dariush. He took down and controlled Francisco Trinaldo. So, you know, you're talking about a guy who's got wins over quality defensive grapplers in the past. And, you know, given RDA's tendency to back up and Chiesa's willingness to come forward and lock up in the clinch, the question then becomes, so we can assume that that's going to happen fairly frequently in this fight. And if that happens, 1, can Chiesa get him down? 2, can he hold him there or threaten a submission? And 3, can RDA do enough work from there when he's able to get back up to offset what Chiesa's doing grappling-wise? And, you know, I think the answers to all 3 are question marks. I do think Chiesa can get him down. You know, we've seen RDA doesn't have the best takedown defense. He's got fantastic get-ups. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He doesn't really put himself into bad positions ever on the ground, but he can be taken down. And I think, you know, we can safely assume that Chiesa will be able to land takedowns here. In terms of 2 and 3, well, this is where it gets kind of interesting because, you know, they both used to fight at 155. The difference is I don't think Dos Anjos really fits 170. He'd probably fit on 165 division if it existed, But, he's beaten, outside of Robbie Lawler, who was shot, and a pretty shot Tarek Safadine, he hasn't beaten like any real legit 170 guys. He beat Kevin Lee, who's really a natural 155er who just struggles to cut weight. Uh, and Chiesa, on the other hand, so I think Dos Anjos, basically, you look at how he's gotten physically abused by the larger welterweights, and it's pretty clear that his natural weight is somewhere between 155 and 170. Chiesa, on the other hand, used to fight at 155, but he's actually a big 170 pounder. He is 6'1", has a huge frame, and has a 75-inch reach. The man is massive. In fact, I read an article on The Athletic discussing Chiesa's weight cutting when he was going to 155, and he went to the Performance Institute, and they basically told him that when he would hit 160 in his weight cut, his body would literally start to shut down. So we're talking about a guy who was a giant at 155, and frankly, he's bigger than most of the big guys at 170. So he's going to be huge in there. And I remember I watched his fight with Diego Sanchez when taping this. I'm like, man, the size discrepancy is huge, but Sanchez must be a lot smaller than RDA. In fact, they're the same height with the same reach. Actually, Sanchez has a longer reach. So RDA is 5'8" at a 70-inch reach. So we're talking about a guy who's going to be at a massive size disadvantage, and frankly, what I think is likely a strength disadvantage. So again, I think Chiesa is going to be able to get him down a few times in this fight. In terms of whether he can work back up, I'd imagine he can, at least early on. I think he'll be able to, but there's a couple things at play here. Like I said, Chiesa is much bigger, so it's going to be a struggle. So I think, his gas tank could start to go there. But also, Chiesa presents some problems that, guys like Usman and Covington don't. First of all, he is a elite offensive jiu-jitsu practitioner. I wouldn't say he's elite altogether, because we've seen him put himself in some compromising situations. But you combine that with the fact that he's extremely long limbs with his frame, and that's extremely difficult to deal with. So RDA, I don't think he's going to be able to reverse position, and frankly, I think he's going to be worrying about working himself out of danger the entire time on the mat. So I don't think this will necessarily be a situation where he's popping up consistently very fast. I mean, it could be, but I think there's some reason to think that Chiesa will be able to, get him down and have some top time. And frankly, given the way, but even if he is able to pop up consistently here, it's a 3-round fight. So you have to win 2 rounds. So the question becomes, can RDA do enough while he's on his back, or once he's up off the ground, to offset the takedowns Chiesa is likely going to land? And the answer is, he probably can, but I think I think he's going to be facing Chiesa's offensive grappling and pressure so often that he's going to have to do a lot at the other times. And that means work the clinch, work his way out of it, and land some big shots. And he's more than capable of doing that, but I don't think you can assume that he'll do that or say knock Chiesa out more than 50% of the time. I do think he'll likely have some moments, and when the fight's in space, he's going to be at a massive, massive advantage here. But I just don't think you can rely on him when we know, because first of all, like I said, he's much shorter and his reach is much shorter. So he's going to have to come into Chiesa's range where he'll be able to clinch up consistently. So while I think he'll be able to hit him at range, I do think Chiesa is going to be able to get the clinch very consistently. And so I just don't think there's going to be a lot of time to have those moments. Now, maybe he can hurt him in the clinch. Maybe he can reverse him on the ground or take him down himself. But when looking at this fight, right now the odds imply that RDA is a 73% to wins this fight 73% of the time. And to me, that's crazy. If we make the assumption that Chiesa can and will land takedowns here, likely multiple takedowns and maybe multiple takedowns around, and that RDA is going to struggle to keep the fight at range, I don't know how you can say he wins this nearly 3 and 4 times. In fact, I'm almost tempted to say Chiesa should be a slight favorite. But, being conservative, let's say it's a 50-50. So ultimately, where we're getting Chiesa here, I mean, at plus 230, that's tremendous, tremendous value if we assume his actual chance to win is somewhere close to 50%. So I have 1.5 units down on Chiesa right now. I'm going to watch this line, and I'm likely going to get at least one more in there on him because I do think this is a real toss-up fight. And so ultimately, my pick here is going to be Chiesa by unanimous decision. So that's my play. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope it was helpful. Follow or fade, and please drop a like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.